All right, let's see if we're going here. See if we can get on the YouTubes. Sorry, I'm running a little bit behind, so I just want to see. Yep, there we are. We're going. I think I can close that. Hello and welcome to another live stream. Thanks for being here this morning. Sorry I'm running a little bit behind, so let me make sure all my things are going. I feel like this happens every time where it's like I schedule a live stream and then I'm running around at the last minute trying to get it going. So if you're here in the chat, go ahead and say hello. Let me know where you're from. If you're here on the replay, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. And we're just going to do a Q&A today. So answer some questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. If you're here watching on the replay, you can type them in the comments and we'll get going with that. And again, sorry, I'm a little bit behind on things. So I did not set this up very well. So let's see what we have. Basically, we had some questions in the comments that I want to go through. And let's not do that one yet. So there was somebody left a comment a while ago, and I couldn't find it, but it was about heat. And it was basically this person was saying that they were experiencing a lot of heat, and even though they were trying to eat cool foods, taking mint tea, they still just felt hot all the time, and they had all these symptoms, and I don't remember what all the symptoms were. And normally I don't like to comment on individual cases, but I thought this was maybe a good reminder that we're in the middle of summer and it's really hot. And there's this thing in Chinese medicine called summer heat. So if you remember from your fundamentals class, we talked about the six evils, wind, heat, cold, dampness, dryness, summer heat. Summer heat is one of the six evils. Summer heat is the only one of the six evils it's only external. So with wind, we can have an external invasion of wind, or we can have internally generated wind. With heat, we can have heat from the environment attacking the body, or we can have internally generated heat. When it comes to summer heat, that's only external. There's no such thing as internally generated summer heat. It's only an external attack of summer heat from the chi of the environment that's coming into the body. And so a lot of times I'll ask people when this comes up in class, what is summer heat? And the students are just kind of like, the ones that haven't read the book are like, it's heat that happens during the summer. And actually, yes, that is a very good description of summer heat. It's basically heat that happens during the summer. So of the six evils, summer heat is kind of interesting that it's only external. It only comes from the environment. And it's the only one that's seasonal. The other ones are predominate in a certain season, but technically you could have heat at any time of the year. Technically you could have cold or wind at any time of the year. Summer heat only happens during the summer. So summer heat is heat that occurs during the summer. And basically we could say that this is similar to like heat stroke. And so that's something when this person in the comment was describing their symptoms, that's kind of what came to mind, and we would have to kind of clarify, does this actually fit into the category of summer heat? But this is just a good reminder that it's in the middle of summer, and at least if you're in North America, we're having these huge heat waves, record high temps. I think Canada actually even has it worse than us now, that it's really hot. And so if we want to be in alignment with the seasons, we need to take that into account. And so this is something we kind of talked about. We did a live stream before. And if I meant to bring this up earlier so I could just pop it up. So now I have to go and find it while we're live. But we did a live stream earlier about reviewing herbs based on their common functions. So where am I going? I need to go to content. Check out our live streams. And there was one that was review of herbs. Herbs review. Show the actual video. Don't show my stats. Oh, don't do that. All right, so if we boop boop a doo, we do that. and we do that, I think you'll see, yeah, here we are. So if you go to this live stream, Office Hours Herbs Review, we get to a section where we talk about summer heat, and we have certain herbs that their common function is they clear summer heat. And this is kind of weird because we don't actually have a category called herbs that clear summer heat. They're just kind of dispersed throughout the other categories. So here we kind of talk about, I don't know if you can see this, but here we kind of talk about some of the characteristics of summer heat. Ooh. This is why you should prepare things first. So here we're talking about some of the characteristics of summer heat. That one we say is an external pathogen. It only happened, or it's only from an external invasion. There's no such thing as internally generated summer heat. And it's a seasonal thing. It only happens during the summer. And like we said, with our other 6 evils, they're predominant in a certain season. So wind is the predominant pathogen of spring, heat is the predominant, and dryness is the predominant pathogen in fall. But summer heat is the one that it only occurs during the summer. And we actually have 2 types. We have summer heat and summer heat dampness. So summer heat is more like a heat stroke. That's just you had too much heat and you start to feel fever, thirst. Vexation is like anxiety or irritability. Absence of sweating, that's you've dried out so much you're not sweating. Surging pulse, this is excess condition. Too much heat. Or summer heat very often combines with dampness. So we can have summer heat dampness and we start to see things like heaviness in the limbs, which is a sign of dampness. Appetite, nausea, vomiting because of dampness affecting mildew. We start to see urination problems, that the dampness is blocking the free flow of urine. So that was kind of thing when the person left this comment with their symptoms. We might have to see is this actually summer heat, and does it fit into the category of either summer heat or summer heat damp? And so what do we do about this? Well, again, if we look at the herbs, if we go forward on here, I think we talked about the herbs. We had a common set of herbs that clear summer heat. Ooh, this is like Inception. It's me within me. We can see. Have I actually, like, how's my hair doing versus old me? Have I lost weight since old me? Anyway, so we have a group of herbs that clear summer heat. And again, these are scattered throughout all the categories. So Xiangru is actually in the warm, acrid release of the exterior. Xigua in the drain fire. He Ludo, drain fire. Qinghao is in the clear deficiency heat category. Huoxiang is an aromatic one. Bai Biando, again, is in the tonified qi category. So we have all these herbs that are in different categories. So we don't have a category of herbs that clear summer heat. They're spread throughout. But something we can notice here is a lot of these herbs are actually food things. So our most common one is xigua, watermelon. So this is something you can do during the summer to beat the summer heat, is eat watermelon. He is lotus leaf. Ludo is mung bean. He lotus leaf, we say it's like a food thing. And in Asian markets, you can buy huge sheets of lotus leaf. The thing is, it's really tough. It's really fibrous. You wouldn't actually eat the leaf itself, but you would use it in other food preparations. So you could boil it, you could wrap things in it and steam it, and it kind of gives it a green tea flavor. And so we'd use it that way. You'd make like little rice balls and wrap it in lotus leaf and then steam it, or make other little packets of thing and steam it in lotus leaf, and that will kind of impart that. You don't actually eat lotus leaf. Ludo is mung bean, so that's really easy to make into like a kanji, or eat moong dal if you're into Indian food. Hua shi is talcum. I think this we would probably use more externally. This is like baby powder, so if you had like a sunburn or you had a lot of dampness because you're sweating a lot, hua shi is actually used in the Chinese materia medica as something that clears summer heat, and especially when there's dampness. Bai Biando is hyacinth bean, and so that's something you might be able to find in the store. And so those are different food therapy options if you're dealing with this summer heat. And so basically, if we want to live in accordance with the seasons, we have to take into account that we're in the season of summer, and so we might want to eat more cooling foods. And so this is like the season to be eating fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, things like that. And sometimes that's kind of weird because it's like a lot of times we say to avoid that. We're like, if you want to protect your spleen, don't eat raw things, don't eat cold things. But if you're going to do it, this is actually the season to do it, where eating these fresh fruits and things can be good for you. Especially things like watermelon, xigua. Watermelon has been called the natural baihutang, white tiger decoction. So especially if you're feeling that heat during the summer, eating watermelon can be very good because it's going to clear the summer heat. It also is very good at generating body fluids, so it quenches thirst and it can promote urination. Again, one of the things we said about the summer heat damp, if I can pull up the right thing here, what we said about the summer heat damp is we start to see urination problems because dampness is blocking the smooth flow of urine, so we see things like Lynn syndrome. So that's another thing that xigua can do, is it can generate fluids and promote urination to help with those urination problems. So those are some things we could do for summer heat. What else? Another interesting thing that happens, and this is not based on any textbooks or any classics, this is just based on my own experience, but sometimes something I say, sometimes something I see when I start talking about things like urination and thirst during the 10 questions, I get some patients that they're like, I'm thirsty, I drink a lot, but it goes right through me and I pee it out right away. And so it's like I drink a lot, but I urinate all the time, and I feel like I'm just not holding on to the water that I drink in. And first of all, when I first heard this, it really freaked me out because that's like a red flag for diabetes. That's polyphagia, polydipsia, polyuria are the signs for diabetes. So I'm like, oh, are you diabetic? And they're like, no, I'm definitely not diabetic. But this is a common thing that kept coming up, and what I've kind of found is that when this happens, when people drink but they can't hold on to the fluids, there might be some sort of thing with electrolytes, that basically your body needs enough electrolytes, enough salt to actually hold on to the fluids. If you don't have those electrolytes, the chemically your body can't hold on to those fluids and they just go right through you. So that's another thing to keep in mind when it's the summer heat and you're drinking a lot, you're really thirsty, is don't just think about water, but think about electrolytes as well, so that you can hold on to that water. When I say electrolytes, I mean things like sodium, potassium, magnesium, to some extent chloride. So some things you can do are, one, you can just go online or go to the store and buy electrolyte powders. At least in America, you can. That's something you can find in grocery stores now. Gatorade, I think, makes a brand, or you can go on Amazon and buy electrolyte powders that you stir in your drink. You could do a homemade version, which just go on and Google electrolyte drink recipe, and it's usually like orange, lemon, lime, some citrusy stuff juiced, then add in some form of sodium, either just regular table salt. Some people use baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. Some people are really into Himalayan sea salt. I'm personally not, but some people are really into Himalayan sea salt. Sometimes what I would use is there's this stuff in the store called light salt. And again, at least in America, if you go in the baking section where all the regular salt is, there's usually like a little light blue bottle called light salt. And what light salt is it's 50% sodium chloride, which is regular salt, and 50% potassium chloride. And so the idea, this is supposed to be a low sodium version of salt. But what this means is you're not only getting the sodium, you're also getting the potassium. And so those are like the electrolytes you want. Magnesium, sometimes you can find like a magnesium sulfate, or you can just get magnesium in pill form, is really easy to find. Potassium, you usually can't find potassium in pill form just because it's fatal if you overdose. But if you get it in the salt form, it's very hard to overdose on the actual salt, potassium chloride. And then you can usually mix in some honey or something too. So usually some citrusy stuff like lemon, lime, orange, freshly squeezed, some sort of salt, and then I like to add some sort of sweetener like honey. And so that's something that can help quench thirst. Or you could just eat watermelon, because watermelon xigua clears summer heat. And apparently this is a thing where people have been really into adding salt to watermelon. I'm not sure if that actually tastes good. People say it's really good, but you're getting those electrolytes along with the other benefits of xigua. So those are some ways we can deal with summer heat. Again, sorry I don't have the question to put at the bottom. I couldn't find the comment this morning, but somebody was asking me about heat, and I don't remember their specific signs and symptoms, but it just made me think of, oh, it's summer. Maybe we should talk about summer heat. So again, if you want to see more about that, that's something we did in a previous live stream. So if you look at our past live streams, this is one called Office Hours Herbs Review 11/21/20, and if you get to the 42 minute mark, we start talking about summer heat, going over what is summer heat, some of the signs and symptoms. Here we go over some of the signs and symptoms and things like that, discussing what summer heat is at about the 40-minute mark, and then we talk about some of the herbs, common herbs used in summer heat. So xiangru, xigua is watermelon, heye, ludo, lotus leaf, and mung bean. Qinghao, artemisia, that's in the deficiency heat category. Hua shi is talcum. We do use that internally, especially for Lin syndrome, but you can also use this externally, like baby powder. So if you're sweaty and damp, hua shi. Huoshang is that stuff that hippies smell like, patchouli. And bibiendo is hyacinth bean. So it could be that bibiendo and ludo are two types of beans, so maybe you could make that into a kanji. But those are some things for summer heat. Awesome. He's saying summer heat, could it be sunstroke? Yeah, when you say heat stroke or sunstroke, that's what we mean by summer heat. And usually by the time it gets to sunstroke, that's a very severe form of summer heat. And usually I think when we say sunstroke, when we talk about these two types, sunstroke would more fall into the category of summer heat. So high fever, thirst, vexation, it's like a Shen disturbance sort of thing. Absence of sweating, dryness, a surging pulse, so an excess pulse, that's summer heat. I think that would be more like heat stroke or sunstroke, something that you get from being out in the sun too long. I think summer heat damp is, you're going to start seeing more UTI symptoms. I think this isn't so much a heat stroke thing. I think this is something that kind of accumulates over the season, especially if you're in a damp environment, that we might start seeing these signs of dampness, like a soggy pulse, a thick tongue coating, and these other things, heaviness of the limbs, appetite problems, are signs of dampness. Alex is saying, good morning. Enjoy listening to you. Thanks for being here, Alex. Sorry, I'm kind of running behind this morning. I'm a little bit frazzled. I sat down at 10:57 when I was ill prepared. But I feel like I do this every week. I'm never on top of things. I need more caffeine. So again, we're doing a live stream. We're just doing a live Q&A. So if you have questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat. If you're watching on the replay, leave them in the comments. The other thing, I feel like I had another question saved, and we can go over it, but I also want to go over liver qi stagnation, and so we'll do that, but it might take me a minute to pull that up. And so again, I just have to find this. So this is a question from, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Carolus. How many different patterns can you diagnose in one patient occurring simultaneously, like overacting, failing to generate? For example, I was able to find more than a couple patterns plus a few underlying patterns. I'm not sure if my diagnosis is right. Maybe my pattern I'm looking to treat is is it the root or the branch? So basically what we're asking here is, when we do a pattern diagnosis, how many patterns can we diagnose in one patient? And this is a good question. And it's kind of because our view of the body in TCM, everything is connected, And so what that means is once one thing happens, it tends to have this cascading effect that affects all the other symptoms, all the other systems. So it can be really hard to differentiate what is the first or main pattern. And so sometimes it might be like a person has spleen qi deficiency, and then because the spleen is deficient, the liver overacts, and so you have all these liver symptoms. But then because the spleen is deficient, it's not nourishing the heart, so you start to have anxiety, insomnia, and Shen problems. And then because the spleen is deficient, it's no longer transforming dampness, so you get all these signs of dampness, heavy limbs, and then once this dampness is accumulating, it blocks the flow of qi, so you get more liver qi, and so just all this shit starts going wrong just because of one thing. And so sometimes it can be difficult to track down what is the main thing. And some of this just takes experience of knowing how to narrow this down. Of once you start seeing a lot of patients and you start seeing this a little bit more, then you're able to hone in on what was the starting thing. Another story I feel like I've told several times at this, when when you're diagnosing a lot of different patterns, is this story that my Chinese teacher told me, which was, say you have a ball of string. Ball of string, ball of string. Say you have a ball of string. And he's like, no, it was a net. Say you have a net. So I feel like one time he told me the story and it was a ball of string. Another time he told me the story it was a net. I think the net makes more sense. So say you have a net, like a fishing net used for fishing, and it's tangled. So many knots. The question is, where do you begin? You have so many knots. It's so tangled. Everything's a mess. Where do you even begin? And the answer is, start with the biggest knot first. And sometimes when you untangle the largest knot, some of the smaller threads will become untangled automatically as a consequence. So this is something that usually I do in whether I'm treating someone or if I see students doing this, when they have a list of patterns, their diagnosis is like 5 lines long. I would say, pick the biggest one and go after that. And once you get the biggest one, some of the smaller things might sort themselves automatically as a consequence. So if you just, instead of trying to address all of the symptoms, just focus on spleen qi. And then once you tonify spleen qi, the spleen is no longer full. That means the liver is unable to overact. Once you tonify the spleen, you have good digestion, you're able to nourish the other organs, so that heart deficiency will go away automatically as a consequence of tonifying the spleen. And so I think it's better to pick whatever you think is the biggest one, and go after that, and that way you have a focused treatment. If you try to use 50 needles and chase down every specific symptom, then the body's going to be confused, the chi's not going to know what to do, and you just have this muddy, do-nothing treatment. So instead, be focused, pick one thing, treat that one thing, and then see if the other things resolve themselves as a consequence. And I think sometimes it can be the case that if you go after the biggest thing, if you just pick one and go after it, maybe it's not the root cause. Maybe there's something else underlying that's causing it. But maybe if you treat that branch symptom, once you get that under control, then the root cause will become more apparent. So maybe you have a person and you see, they have all these signs of liver qi stagnation. So you're going to say, I'm going to course liver qi. And then, so you do that, and after that, their stress goes away, their tightness goes away, they're a little bit calmer, but now you see all these signs of spleen qi deficiency. Well, maybe the spleen qi deficiency was the underlying thing, but you just couldn't see it because the liver was screaming so loudly. And yeah, maybe if you were a superior practitioner, you would know that was caused by the spleen and you would go after the spleen first, but so what? You did one treatment of calming down the liver, and now the spleen symptoms became more apparent, and now the root cause becomes more apparent, and you can go after that. So that's the thing. So I guess if the question is how many patterns, it's like technically you see a lot of different patterns just because there's this cascading effect. And I think you see the same thing, like even if you're talking about musculoskeletal complaints. This was a common thing when we would talk about muscle conditions, that it's like once one muscle breaks down, if like one muscle in the rotator cuff starts to have problems, then you get problems in the entire area just because supraspinatus crapped out, and now these other muscles have to compensate for it, or because it's not working, then other muscles get weakened, or other muscles have to work overtime in order to compensate that. So you end up with problems everywhere, even though the root cause was one muscle. We get kind of the same thing with the Zongfu organs or with the channels. Even though the problem is in one area, it starts affecting the other organs that along the Sheng or the Ke cycle or the other relationships. So how many different patterns could you diagnose? I mean, I would try to stick to one. Try to stick to one or two and really work on that, and then see what happens, see what resolves. You don't have to treat, don't try to treat 5 patterns in one treatment. Don't modify your formula. People do the same thing with formulas, where they start with a base formula and then they modify it by adding in 20 different herbs to try to chase down all these symptoms or all these different patterns. Maybe just stick to what you think is the main pattern, and that way the body knows what to do with those herbs, and see what else happens. So Helen is saying, I found once something starts clearing up, the patient becomes aware of new symptoms. How would you explain that? Yeah, I think this is a thing that can happen is sometimes it's like all the symptoms were always there. They just didn't notice them. And so, like I remember once seeing this with a balance technique practitioner that she was doing a live demo treating headache, and so she would the patient say, oh, the headache is right here, and so she would needle some points, and then she'd say, oh, well, now I feel the headache right here, and the practitioner said, it's not that the headache moved, it's that the headache was there, it's just it was strongest right here, and that's where she felt it. And then once we resolved that, these other things, since that was no longer the main thing, she started noticing the other things. So I think it's also like, if your chief complaint is headache, maybe you also have anxiety and palpitations, but you just don't notice it because you have migraines all the time. And so once you resolve the migraines, then they come in and say, oh, I have these other things. It's also possible that that might be a sign that you're treating the branch and not the root. And so it could be that they had a Shaoyang headache just because the liver and gallbladder are the angriest and shout the loudest. So that's the major symptom that the patient felt. But that Shaoyang headache was actually caused by an underlying spleen qi deficiency or something like that, or an underlying yin deficiency or something like that. So it could be that you first find some symptoms, you're treating these branch symptoms, and once those branch symptoms are gone, then the root starts to show itself. So I think that's what's happening there. Alex is saying, speaking of qi stagnation, meridian blockage. So this is something, when we talk about blocks, this is something we usually, or at least I usually associate with 5-element acupuncture. I believe this is not actually part of 5-element acupuncture that J.R. Worsley studied in, I think he was in Taiwan when he studied the system, but he kind of did a tour of all these different places, and he kind of incorporated other things, and I think blocks was one of them, that maybe he got it from Korea or someplace else, but he kind of incorporated it into his system. But usually when we talk about blocks, we tend to talk about it in the context of five elements. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. My official, I don't feel well. I can't stop sweating. What should I do? My official advice is go see a doctor. I don't want to give personalized medical advice, but we were just talking about summer heat and things like that, that were most of the, at least North America is going through a heat wave. I'm not sure how Europe or the other parts of the world are, but at least around here we're going through a heat wave, and so we have to be really conscious about our lifestyle and what we're eating in terms of heat. I got distracted. What were we talking about? We were talking about blocks. And so basically the idea of blocks is that, remember, qi moves in a cyclical flow: lung, large intestine, stomach, spleen, heart, SI, UB, kidney, pericardium, sandra, gallbladder, liver, and then back to lung. And so qi is flowing in a continuous circuit through all these channels. And the idea is that you can get blockages between these two channels. So the blockages is always going to occur between two adjacent channels in this circuit flow. And so a really common one is liver-lung, just because the liver flows into the lung. Or SIUB, because we're lung, large intestine, stomach, spleen, heart, SIUB. So SI and UB are right next together, so you can have a blockage between these two. And the way you diagnose this is with a pulse. So if you had a blockage between the liver and lung, imagine you had a river going along, and some beaver came and built a dam right in the middle of the river, or a big boulder fell right in the middle of the river. What's going to happen is, as the water is flowing along, when it encounters this blockage, before the blockage, the water is going to rise up, and after the blockage, the water is going to be lower because not as much water is getting through. And so this is what's going to happen when you feel the pulse. So if there's a blockage between the liver and lung, you're going to feel the liver pulse is really full, really excess, but the lung pulse is really weak and really deficient. And that might mean that there's a blockage between those two. And the way you resolve this blockage is you needle the last point on the liver channel and the first point on the lung channel. And so it's kind of like you're flossing it from both sides and you're clearing out this blockage. And once you do that, if you did it properly, you should feel the pulse change immediately. And then, side note, when I say the last point and the first point, what I really mean is the exit point on the previous channel and the entry point on the next channel, because exit and entry points are not always the first and last channel. So that's something you have to know about your channel theory, is what are the entry and exit points. So for example, between when you talk about lung to large intestine, it's not like the qi goes down to lung 11 and then whoop, jumps over to Li1. That's not what happens. If you look at your books, what you'll see actually happens is it goes down, and then at lung 7, there's a branch that goes off to Li1. So that would be the entry exit point, was actually lung 7 to Li1. That's how the qi connects to the flow, not through lung 11, Li1. So we have to know those entry exit points. What were we talking about? Do you believe that liver 14 and lung 1 is good practice for liver qi stagnation? Possibly. And I think that it's, if you do that, you would want to first diagnose it in the pulse. And again, if you find a 5-element practitioner, maybe they can explain this or demonstrate this to you a little bit better. But usually, at least for me, if I'm doing those kinds of points, I want to be able to feel it in the pulse first. And then you needle the points 5-element way. They don't actually retain the points. They just go in, get really strong qi, and withdraw it. And then they check the pulse and see, did it clear? And so if this was a problem and if you did it correctly, you should feel the pulse change. So you go in and it's like, oh, liver pulse, really excess, really big, really angry. Lung pulse, really weak, really deficient. There could be some blockage. Needle liver 14, needle lung 1, check the pulse again. The liver pulse should go down and the lung pulse should go up. And again, if you follow around a 5-element practitioner, sometimes they can do this. They'll have you feel the pulse, and they'll needle while you have your hands on the pulse, and you can feel the pulse change. And so that's a good sign that something is happening, that you can feel the liver go down and the lung come up. So that's something. And do you use that in your practice? Yes, sometimes. Again, when I feel in the pulse, I feel like liver-lung is a really common one. SIUB, small intestine urinary bladder, is another common one. And I think, but that means you have to needle UB1, which not a lot of people are comfortable with. Actually, I need to ask somebody about that, because I knew a practitioner who would always do the last SI19, and I think the exit point is actually SI18, so I need to ask about that. Another common one, I'm not sure if spleen heart is super common, but I feel like that's. But I think liver lung is by far the most common blockage you'll see, and we can talk more about that because I wanted to bring something else up. Let me just bring this up because I posted something on both on Facebook and on Instagram where we talked about liver qi stagnation. I thought it might be fun to go through some of these, so let me see if I can pull up my Instagram on the internets. Oh, geez, it's going to make me sign in. Will it let me go? I just want to look at my picture. Okay. Hopefully nothing bad happens when I do this. So this was kind of a meme I posted on Instagram. Sorry, we'll go back for a minute. Sorry, my I think there's a delay in the YouTube thing, so, and the live streaming thing, so I think a lot of times people ask questions and I don't see it till 30 seconds later. So again, going back to the blocks, which side are bilateral? I believe they usually do bilateral. Sometimes the 5-element people are very specific that you do left, right, left, right. I've had other people say it doesn't really matter, just follow a pattern. But clearing blocks, they usually, I guess what I've seen 5-element people do is they usually needle bilaterally, but a lot of times the blockage is only on one side. So you might do liver 14 on one side and not a lot happens, and you do liver 14 on the other side, and then the patient's like, whoo, I felt something move. That was really intense. And then it was like, oh, the blockage was on that side. So sometimes it depends. And I think it's also weird because I think 5-element people, their location for liver 14 is slightly different. So TCM is in the intercostal space, forcing lateral to midline. They actually come below the ribs where this notch is. At least I've seen some people do that. So it could be that 5-element liver 14 is, the location is slightly different than TCM liver 14, and that's just a thing that happens. That's what makes taking nationals is really weird, because it'll be like, locate this point, and there'll actually be 3 points on there. That one is the TCM location, one is the 5-element location, one is the Japanese location, and anyway, sometimes 5-element people locate things differently. Let's see, there we go. But speaking of liver, which camera is on? Speaking of liver qi stagnation, so I kind of snarkily posted this thing on Instagram about how everybody loves 4 gates, but we also asked the question, what is your favorite, if you're not into 4 gates, what's your favorite way to move liver qi? If we're going to say that, because I'm a hipster and I don't like using 4 gates. And so I thought it might be fun to go over some of these other things. And I guess maybe we should just clarify that, go back to the camera I want. Maybe we should just clarify that, like, I don't think 4 gates is necessarily bad. I just think that sometimes there are other options. And so it's not, I wouldn't say you should never use 4 gates. I think, like with Patrick, like I do a podcast with Patrick, he tends to be a hipster about things. Like he refuses to do 4 gates, he refuses to do stomach 36, he refuses to add GONS out of formulas just because he hates it and he's a hipster. I think sometimes it's okay to use those, just use them when they're appropriate. So the question then becomes, when is 4 gates appropriate? So 4 gates is not just something that Americans made up. The Chinese term is si guan. Guan is the same as, we often translate it as gate, but it also means like pass, like a frontier pass. It also means, it technically doesn't mean gate. Nigel Weissman goes on this big rant about guan doesn't mean gate. Men is gate, like Ming Men, the men is gate. Guan is more that the bar that you put across the gate in order to lock it. And so that's like when we're taking the pulse, so you have the tsun, the guan, and the chur. Some people will say inch, gate, and foot. Nigel Weissman says inch, bar, and cubit, because he feels like those are better translations. That guan actually means bar. It's the bar that you put across the gate. But it's also like pericardium 6 is neguan, inner gate. Sanja 5 is y-guan, outer gate. So guan means gate. This combination, I believe, first appeared in the Great Compendium of Acupuncture, and I believe it was originally indicated specifically when you had liver problems causing wind, internal circulation, a wind that would go up into the head. And so that makes sense. So I guess what I'm saying is that's when I really like to use 4 gates is when there's liver qi stagnation, but specifically things in the head. So liver 3, you can thread it through to kidney 1, and that will have an anchoring effect. It will move the liver qi, but it also can bring things down. If stuff is rising up into the head, you can anchor it down with liver 3 threaded through to kidney 1. And then Li4 is the command point of the face. It's a big point for headache, so it's good for stuff in the head. So that's when I really like to use it, is when I have liver problems and there's also something going on in the head. So if we have liver qi stagnation with a lot of headache, liver qi stagnation causing yang rising and dizziness and stuff in the head, then I would use 4 gates. Otherwise, I might ask myself, is there a better option I can use? And yes, I'm drinking Diet Mountain Dew. Don't judge me. The coffee hasn't been kicking in. We need something extra. So that's why I wanted to ask some people. Might be fun to go over what are some other ideas about liver qi stagnation. So here we have Recovering Gypsy saying liver 14 plus, whenever I highlight it, it disappears, plus lung 1 or 2. So here we're getting back to this idea of a blockage. Liver 14 is the last point on the liver channel. Lung 1 is the first point on the lung channel. And so we have this connection. That's how the qi flows. Lung, large intestine, stomach, spleen, heart, SI, kidney, pericardium, sanja, gallbladder, liver, and then back to lung. And the name of liver 14 is actually cycle gate, because it's like it's completing the cycle. You have this cycle of qi, and it's exiting the liver and entering the lung to start a new cycle. So this person is saying liver 14 and lung 1 or lung 2. I'm not sure why lung 2. Liver 14, lung 1, and we're doing entry-exit points. So it's kind of like we're drawing excess qi out of the liver channel and then drawing it into the lungs so that it can be dispersed and continue through the cycle. So that's one way to do it. So when we were talking about blockages, that's actually what the first thing that came up that this person said. So when we were talking about this is the same question we were asking about liver 14 and lung 1, good practice for liver qi stagnation. Yeah, I think it's okay. Because like I said, you're drawing qi out of the liver channel and putting it into the lung channel. I would probably use this when I felt it appropriate in the pulse. So again, you would feel fullness in the liver position and emptiness in the lung position. And after you needle those points, you should see the pulse change. So that's one option. Let's see what else we have. Liver 3 and gallbladder 34 with Easton. This is an interesting one. So gallbladder 34 is another one that I like. It's the influential point or command point or gathering point of the sinews. So especially if you have sinew problems, GB34 can be good, but it's also just a good moving point. So this is another option I like. I like those Wang Juyi point pairs. And what I like about his pairs is we tend to use pairs from upper and lower body. So use 1 point on the arm and 1 point on the leg. So he would use gallbladder 34 and Sanjiao 6 together as a point combination. And so that's something I really like when there's liver qi stagnation. Because kind of one of the points that Wang Juyi makes is when you have excess or heat or stagnation, you tend to go to yang channels, just because yang channels tend towards excess, because that's a yang thing. Yang channels tend towards heat because they're yang. Whereas if you have cold or deficiency, you tend to go to yin channels. So because cold is yin, deficiency is yin. So if you want to tonify, use yin channels. If you want to drain, use yang channels. So that's kind of his idea here, is that if we have liver qi stagnation, if it's an excess condition, even though it's in the liver channel, we might still want to use Shaoyang points because they're yang channels. So something like gallbladder 34, sanjiao 6 can be really good. I especially use this if there's like problems on the rib sides, just because I remember from CAM that that's the point combination for stuff on the rib side. So if it's like any kind of injury to the ribs, like herpes zoster shingles in the ribs, or even just tightness, rib side pain, or sighing. If a person is, sometimes you get people that every time you ask them a question, like, so how's your sleep? They're like, it's okay. How are your bowel movements? They're okay. And so basically, to me, that's a sign when they're sighing. That's a sign that they're trying to move their rib sides to kind of move that liver qi along. So I might use gallbladder 34, sanjiao 6, because it's specifically good for moving things through the ribs. If it's more, I think Wang Ji says if you have liver qi stagnation with heat, then instead go to gallbladder 41, sanjiao 5, which I believe also opens the daimon. And just because those have some heat clearing action too. So if you just have just straight up liver qi stagnation, or straight up stagnation in the Shaoyang, GB34, sanjiao 6, if there's liver qi stagnation with some heat, then sanjiao 5, gallbladder 41. Maybe look that up to make sure I'm remembering that correctly, because I sometimes say the wrong thing. But so that's his TCM Hoots. I wanna talk to him. He does a lot of sorry, wrong camera. I want to talk to him. He does a lot of stuff in the with Instagram, a lot of marketing. He's very successful marketing on social media. So I want to get him on the podcast. We're just been really busy. Motion and Needle says, crying laughing face ×3, but it works! Exclamation point. And Sarah says, so well, heart smiley face, laughing sideways smiley face. And yeah, I would agree that a lot of people use 4 gates, liver 3, Li4, because a lot of times it works. I guess my thing is, sometimes we have to know is, do we have something better? And so I think sometimes people default to this, 4 gates, do 4 gates, give them Shaoyasan. And sometimes we can ask ourselves, yeah, maybe that works 60, 70% of the time. But if you're doing an individualized treatment, is there something that's maybe better for this particular patient? Maybe Shaoyasan isn't the best thing. Maybe they need Chaihu Shugan-san. Maybe they need Suni-san. Maybe they need Chaihu Jialongu Mulitang. These other formulas might be better than just a generic Shaoyasan. Same thing with 4 gates. It could be that liver 3, Li4 is okay, but maybe lung 5, pericardium 6 would be better. You would get better results. And so I think that's the question I would ask. Qiological has a podcast. I'll be honest, I've never really listened to a Qiological podcast all the way through, but everybody says it's really good. So if you want to listen to podcasts, go on Apple Podcasts and search for Qiological, and this guy's been doing podcasts for years, so he has a lot of stuff on there. He's saying liver 6, pericardium 4. This one is really interesting. I have to admit, I don't need a liver 6 and pericardium 4 very often, but here we're doing the Qi cleft points on the Jue-yin channels. So liver 6 is the Qi cleft point on the foot Jue-yin channel. Pericardium 4 is the Qi cleft point on the hand Jue-yin channel. And so that's interesting because usually we talk about Qi cleft points are for acute conditions, excess conditions, and pain. So these might be good things. It's where the Qi gathers before plunging more deeply. So these might be good points. I'd say liver 6, I usually think of, because it's a Qi cleft point, we're talking about excess and pain. I usually think of like hernia. And so when you have like inguinal hernia or inguinal pain, I should probably not gesture to my crotch so much. When we have those kind of things, that's liver 6 is what I think of. But Qi cleft points are where the Qi gathers before it plunges more deeply. So it could be that needling these points is really good for creating movement. And so that's another option. And again, I like these pairs when we're using... this is a Jue-yin combination, so I like this because it's very balanced, it's very symmetrical. I'm just into those things that we're using the Qi cleft point on the foot Jue-yin and the Qi cleft point on the hand Jue-yin. We're using a hand and a foot. They're both Jue-yin, they're both Qi cleft. I really like that. Master Tongues, Lingu Dai Bai, Ho Ying Ju. I don't know Master Tongue points very well. Oh, what's the 4 gates? I probably should have said that. 4 gates, liver 3, Li 4. And so this is a common combination for moving liver chi. So they also look like mirror images. So liver 3 is the yuan source point on the liver channel. Li4 is the yuan source point on the large intestine channel. And like I said, they're kind of like mirror images because Li4 is between the first and second finger. Liver 3 is between the first and second toe. So if you they look similar, is what I'm saying. Oh, that's the wrong one. They look similar. I guess I mean they look similar, is what I'm saying. They're between your first and second fingers and toes. And the idea here is liver 3, it's the yuan source, but it's a source point, but it's really good for moving qi. Li4, because the Yangming channels are full of qi and blood, Li4 is very good for moving qi and blood. It's very good at creating movement. In fact, it's so good at creating movement, it's contraindicated in pregnancy because it'll just move the baby right out of there. So Li4, because it's on the Yangming channel, it's very good for creating movement, and they're mirror images. So that's what we mean by 4 gates. Lots of laughing smiley faces. What does it say? Liver 2 and liver 5. Modern Medicine Woman says liver 2 and liver 5. Tiger, arrow, smiling cat. So it turns someone who's really feisty into a happy kitty. Yeah, this is interesting because usually liver 2, we think that's a yin spring point. It's good for clearing heat. However, if we remember our 5 phases, how does it go? Wood, fire, earth, metal, water. So wood is liver, fire is the sun. So we say drain the child. In cases of excess, drain the child. So liver 2 is the sedation point on the liver channel. So here we're using a combination. We're using the sedation point on the liver channel with the luo connecting point on the liver channel. So that's really interesting. Do I have more? Oh. This one says meditation. Yeah, we should also think about different lifestyle practices. Meditation, I think maybe is good for someone who's really tense. Sometimes people with liver qi stagnation have a hard time sitting down, so sometimes it's good to prescribe something more active. And so maybe if you say do meditation, realistically they're not going to do it. But if you say do tai chi, that's a little bit more active, so they might be more likely to follow through. But also just like exercise, like go for a walk, go for a run, hit a punching bag, something like that. Something that creates the movement physically you can do as well. So either something very active or something like meditation. In Italy, we use soccer. Yeah, Fabio is an Italian name. In Italy, we use soccer. So I don't know. I feel like with Europeans, sometimes football causes more liver qi stagnation. I don't know. Maybe not Italians, but I think some of the people that watching football just makes them angry. So here's an interesting one. De Qi of Reagan Lee. De Qi says heart 8, lung 8, liver 2, liver 4. What's going on here? Somebody tell me why she chose these points. I'm just checking the chat window. Why would we like that's a weird combination of points? What does that mean? Well, let's think. Heart 8, lung 8, liver 2, liver 4. There are 4 points. Maybe this is a 4-point needle technique thing. So let's take a look here. So let's think about this. Remember our circle of the sheng and the ke cycle? We went wood, fire, earth, metal, water. Back to wood. So if we have wood, the son of wood is fire. So we say in cases of, so when you say in cases of excess, drain the child. So the child of wood is fire, so we want to use fire points. That means we use the fire point on the channel. So like we said, that would be liver 2. Then we use the Harari point on the fire channel. So we use the fire point of the fire channel, that would be heart 8. So that's where we get liver 2 and heart 8. We would drain these points. In case of excess, drain the child. So we would drain liver 2, the child point, and we would drain heart 8, the Harari point on the child channel. Then what else do we have? So we go wood, fire, earth, metal, water. In cases of excess, we tonify the controller. So what controls wood? Wood, fire, earth, metal, water. Metal controls wood because, like, think about an axe chopping down a tree. That metal is controlling the wood. That metal is keeping the wood in check with an axe chopping down a tree. So if the liver is being overactive, if we tonify metal, then it will keep the liver in check. So what do we mean when we say tonify metal? So we would use the metal point on the channel, which in this case would be liver 4 is the metal point on the liver channel, and then we would use the Harari point on the metal meridian. So the metal point on the metal channel is lung 8. Lung 8 is the Jing River metal point. Lung is metal, so that's the metal point on the metal channel. So we would tonify liver 4 and lung 8. Hopefully that made sense. I was trying to explain, like, on the fly, explain 4-point needle technique. But that's what this comment is. When you say heart 8, lung 8, liver 2, liver 4, this is a 4-point needle technique. And I think we should probably specifically say that we're going to tonify the metal points. So tonify lung 8 and liver 4, tonify the controller so that it can control the liver and keep it from being overactive. And then heart 8 and liver 2, we're draining them. We're draining the child. Once we take away from the child, then the liver will have to send some of its energy there, and it will automatically drain that. I don't know if that was a good explanation. This is 4-point needle technique. And so basically I would say these are really good. I would just say make sure you're doing this in a condition of liver excess. So if you have excess liver qi stagnation or liver heat, liver fire, then this is going to very strongly drain the liver. And I just point this out because sometimes in practice we see liver qi stagnation, but it's due to some underlying deficiency. So this would be like the formula Iguanjin, linking decoction. It's when the liver is deficient, it can fail to perform its function of free coursing. And so sometimes we might see signs of liver qi stagnation, but there's some underlying deficiency, so we actually want to tonify liver blood or tonify liver yin so that the liver can perform its function of free coursing. So if that were the case, I would maybe not use this because this is very strongly draining the liver. There might be cases where it's more appropriate to tonify the liver. And that's why I like the Wang Ji combination. Wang Ji, when he talks about his point pairs, he says if we have liver qi stagnation where there's some underlying deficiency, use liver 5, pericardium 6. It's the Luo connecting point on the foot Jue Yin combined with the Luo connecting point on the hand Jue Yin. And that's how I like, especially when there's emotional problems, because Luo connecting points also have something to do with the emotions. Gallbladder 37 and liver 3. This is Apharius WDG. Gallbladder 37 and liver 3. So this would be an example of the guest and host method, that we're using the Yuan source point on the liver channel and the Luo connecting point on the yin-yang pair. And so that's an example of that. And sometimes, again, it's like if you read the Wang Ji when he talks about Luo connecting points, remember what we said about Luo connecting points is they can affect disorders of the yin-yang pair. They affect disorders along the pathway of the Luo connecting. Anyway, Wang Ji also talks about how we can actually use this to transfer qi between yin-yang pairs. We can use these Luo connecting points. So if we have excess in the gallbladder and not enough in the liver, we can use Luo connecting points to kind of shunt some of that excess from one channel to another. But I think this is kind of assuming that there's this differential, that the yang channel is excess and the liver channel is either normal or deficient. I believe what he says is if there's excess in the yang channel and you want to move it over to the yin channel, use the Luo connecting point on the yang channel. Whereas if it's more there's deficiency in the yin channel, then use the Luo connecting point on the yin channel, and that will draw energy from the yang channel. So either way, you're moving energy from yang to yin. It just depends on, is the yang channel excess or is the yin channel deficient? Go read Wang Juyi and read the chapter about little connecting points. He kind of talks about that. And also, so I had somebody, I think this is back in the day. I remember Patrick saying something about this, that he liked to do this combination where if there was excess in the gallbladder channel, he would use gallbladder 37, the Lowell connecting point of the gallbladder meridian. By using that Lowell connecting point, he would send qi from the gallbladder to the liver. Then he would need a liver 3. Liver 3 is Tai Chong, the Great Rushing, so that would send that qi up the body, would cause it to rush upwards. Then he would use liver 14, lung 1 to transfer that qi from the liver channel to the lung channel, and the lung would disperse it over the rest of the body. So that's kind of an interesting thought too, but it begins with gallbladder 37, liver 3, the Lowell connecting point, and the yuan source point. CACA Corey says Li4, liver 3, gallbladder 34, Sanjiao 6. So yeah, here we're combining 4 gates with that combination gallbladder 34, Sanjiao 6. That combination, again, I think in CAM, it says this is the combination for rib side problems. In Wang Juyi, he likes to use this for just general qi stagnation. Open Sesame. Meats on Wellness says Open Sesame. Oh, because you like you open the 4 gates? Yeah, maybe. Zhongyi Study says Zhongyi is the word for Chinese medicine. Zhong actually means middle, but the Chinese word for China is Zhongguo, middle country. So sometimes when you see the word Zhong, it actually means it's referring to China, not the middle. Which is kind of interesting when people talk about, oh, these Europeans are ethnocentric or Americans are being ethnocentric. It's like, the name of China is center country. That's, everybody believes they're in the center of the world. That's kind of a universal thing, that everybody thinks of themselves as puts themselves on the center of the map. Anyway, I don't want to get canceled. Zhongyi Study says, so this means open. Here, that's the number 4, Si Guan. So when you say four gates, we have Si Guan. That's a Chinese. This is Shi, which means is or are, to be. It's a verb. And that's ba. I'm not sure what ba means in this case. So my Chinese isn't very good, but I think he's saying open the 4 gates is okay, or is a good thing. So he's kind of disagreeing with me that it's like, oh, it's okay to open the 4 gates. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. It's okay to open the 4 gates. There are situations where it's appropriate. It's just that sometimes I think there are situations where we can do better. Gallbladder 41 and liver 14. Again, an interesting one. We're doing the last point on the liver channel. Also, liver 14 is the front move of the liver. And then gallbladder 41, yeah, gallbladder 41 I really like. Again, I like this combination gallbladder 41 Sanjiao 5. Not necessarily to open the daimai, but it's good for liver qi stagnation, especially when we have heat. And I feel like liver 40 or gallbladder 41 is a very good grounding point. So if there's a lot of qi going up, people have a lot of stuff going on in the head, and I want to draw the qi downward, either gallbladder 40, the yuan source point, or gallbladder 41 are good options to just draw that qi downward. Sometimes I would do that even if I had something, maybe I was doing an ortho treatment on the neck and I had all these points on the neck. A person had neck pain or neck tightness. They walked around like this and be like, oh, it hurts right here on my gallbladder channel. I might do local points like gallbladder 20 and gallbladder 21. But then I want to put a point in the foot to draw the qi downward. Because if a person has neck problems and you only put needles in the neck, the qi is going to go to the neck and maybe make the symptoms worse. So put a bunch of needles in the neck, but then also do some stuff in the foot to draw the qi downward and ground the patient. So a lot of times with things like headaches or something like that, I might do GB20, GB21 to open up the neck, and then do something like gallbladder 40, gallbladder 41 to draw that qi downward and ground the patient. And it turns out gallbladder 41 you can still get to when the patient is face down. If their ankles are propped up under a pillow, you can still get to GB41 when they're face down. So I like that one. Boop boop badoo. Sanka of Healing, 4 doors. Somebody tell me what four doors is. Because I thought four. I'm not sure that's like a traditional name. Like four gates. I know that comes from certain books where they call it Siguan, four doors. I'm not sure if that's just something an American made up. And I think that four doors is stomach 36, Li10. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong there. But I think it's stomach 36, Li10. So Zu San Li, Shou San Li, leg 3 mile and arm 3 mile. It's a point combination on the Yang Ming channels. I feel like I use that when I want to like tonify qi and there's something going on in the middle jiao. I'm not sure I'd use that for liver qi stagnation, but it's on the Yang Ming channels, and we say Yang Ming channels are full of qi and blood, so they're good for movement. So maybe that would work. Maybe not the first thing I would think of unless they had some underlying spleen qi deficiency. So that's all we got there. Let's see on Facebook. Yana D says, I'm not a big fan of four gates, but recently my patients specifically requested it. And that's always interesting. It's like, when your patients request points, what do you do? I've had some people who say they're like, no, this is my treatment. I'm in control of the treatment. I'm going to do what I think is best for you, not what you requested because your other acupuncturist did it. Sometimes when people request points, I just do them to humor the patient. Just so they don't give me problems, then I do whatever I want. But so sometimes people will request four gates, or it's really common that they'll request yin tong. So I'll just do it, but then do what I want on top of that, as long as what they're requesting isn't going to hurt them. And sometimes I think that's a sign of that's a very Wood thing to do. Like, you remember, Wood is like a general commanding the troops. So sometimes you get patients come in and it's like, oh, I need this point and this point and this point. It's like they're like a general commanding the troops. That's a sign that they're very Wood. Larissa says, needling someone else's liver 3 while giggling. Yeah, giggle therapy. Depends on where it's stuck. I like Sanjiao 5, gallbladder 41. So again, this pair that's like a daimai pair, but it's really good for just moving things because it's on a yang channel. So yang channels are better for movement. And I think Wang Juyi specifically uses this when there's liver qi stagnation with some element of heat. Liver plus 4 gates. So yeah, you can do this in combination. That way you're getting liver 3, you're getting kind of a yin pair, and you're combining it with the Xiao Yang pair. Or you can do this with gallbladder 34, Sanjiao 6 plus 4 gates. I think somebody else said that. And then Zachary Ray says, I throw in lung to balance liver. Yeah, because we said this before when we talked about the Ke cycle, the controlling cycle, that we could, if liver is being overactive, maybe we could tonify lung in order to control the liver. So that's another possibility. I feel like normally when we see that, though, in TCM, when we talk about the Ke relationship between the lung and the liver, usually it's the liver rebelling against the lung. Is rebelling the right word? Usually it's the opposite. It goes the opposite of the Ke cycle, that the liver is overactive and then the person has symptoms of cough. So it's like the liver is so overactive, it rebels in the opposite direction of the Ke cycle. And I feel like we see there are certain points and certain herbal formulas where we talk about this. And so I feel like that's kind of what happens more often along the Ke cycle, but we could also say that we're tonifying the controller to drain liver. I think this is the last one. Liver 5, liver 14, or 13. So again, liver 5 is the Luo connecting point, so I like that. Gallbladder 23, that's really interesting. Where is gallbladder 23? I don't even know where gallbladder 23 is. It's probably, it's around in here somewhere, I assume. It's maybe on the daimai. GB34, again, is the influential point. GB41, again, I like for grounding. UB47, I'm going to assume that's on the outer shoe line of either, let's see, I think when you go that direction you subtract 1, so that's going to be the outer shoe of UB18. So it's going to be the outer shoe point of the liver. So yeah, that's interesting, yeah. So I thought that would just be fun to go over. Oh, wrong button. I thought that would just be fun to go over. some other options. So if you feel like you're getting stuck on 4 gates and you want some other options, those are some other suggestions. And again, you can read the Wang Juyi book. You can read the Wang Juyi book, Applied Channel Theory. He has a section here where in the back he talks about point pairs, and he specifically has a section on stuff for liver qi stagnation, where he talks about different combinations. So there he talks about on the yin channels you could do like liver 5 pericardium 6, the little connecting points. You could also do liver 2 pericardium 8, do the fire points. If you want to go to a yang channel, you could do gallbladder 34 sanjiao 5 or gallbladder 41 sanjiao 6. Here we go. So he even has this section. See if we can focus on this with the lighting. Point pairs for treating dysfunction of the Jue Yin and Xiao Yang. So he talks about liver 5, pericardium 6, the little connecting points. He talks about pericardium 7, liver 2. So we're doing a Yuan source point with a fire point. He talks about Sanjiao 5, GB41, specifically for clearing excess heat. He talks about GB34, Sanjiao 6 to dredge the liver channel. Liver 5, pericardium 6, he talks about, he says, this action is likened to shaking out a fold in a piece of cloth or stretching out a string that has become twisted and wrapped upon itself. Clinically, this pathodynamic often involves irregular menses associated with qi stagnation, including symptoms involving generalized lack of motivation. In this case, there's a lack of movement in the Jue Yin, but little heat. And so I think that's an interesting analogy where he talks about it's like shaking out a wrinkly piece of cloth. I think that's an interesting thing. So thank you for indulging me while we talked about liver qi stagnation. I'll try to do some things, get to some questions here. Yeah, so we talked about blockage using entry-exit points. So that's something that came up in our combinations. Can you explain how Xiaoyang is associated with summer heat? I'm not sure that it is. I think maybe I started talking about liver qi stagnation, then reverted back to summer heat, and then I might have just been confused, but I'm not sure that there's a connection between Xiaoyang and summer heat. That might have just been me being silly. Yeah, we answered that question. Fabian, if I have a patient with liver stagnation and lung dryness, can I support both at the same time? Yes, that's what we were talking about along, because remember the liver and the lung have a relationship along the Ke cycle, or the controlling cycle. So normally metal controls liver, because you can think about an axe chopping down wood. So metal is supposed to keep the liver in check. However, remember when we said about, when we talked about these relationships along the 5 phases, we talked about rebellion or insulting. Because usually we talk about like liver overacts on spleen. That's something that happens along the Ke cycle, that the liver is supposed to control the spleen. But when the liver gets too overactive, it can overact on the spleen. Well, the same thing, we have the same thing happening the other direction, but we call it insulting or rebelling, where normally the metal is supposed to control wood, but if the liver is too overactive, it can rebel backwards along the Ke cycle and insult the lung. And so this can be a common pattern when you have too much liver stuff going on. It will affect the lung. So you can have liver heat or liver qi stagnation, and that heat will transfer in the lung and cause dryness and cough. So that's a common pattern. I feel like there are some points or herbs that are specifically indicated for this pattern, and I can't remember what they are off the top of my head. So he's talking about using bladder 17, liver 3. So UB17 is the influential point of blood. Liver 3, spleen 6, and kidney 3 for yin. And add lung 9. Yeah, so I think you can do both at the same time. I guess it kind of depends on how you want to do it. The spleen points seem a little bit weird to me, but it kind of depends on what else is going on in the patient, if they have some underlying digestive things or something that's causing that. But I would think that if you're seeing both of these at the same time, like where you have like a liver excess and a lung deficiency, think about that relationship on the Ku cycle and balancing that out. So it could be that calming the liver. Once you calm the liver, it will stop insulting the lungs, but you could also support the lungs directly, either with lung 9 to tonify yin. You could also use other lung points, lung 7, lung 1 as the front move point. Those are other options. Because I think especially using, I like to use combinations between lung and kidney for metal and water. So I think throwing in a kidney point is not bad. But yeah, maybe do some stuff to sedate the liver and do some stuff to tonify the lung. I think that's actually not a common pattern, but it's a pattern that makes sense along the Ku cycle that those two would happen together. Which book do you recommend reading cover to cover for a struggling student prepping for boards? I feel like this is another question that somebody asked. Yeah, because I had somebody ask on a comment, could you please make a live stream about tips on how to prepare for a study for board exam NCCOM? And that's kind of difficult for me just because I don't really know what's on board tests anymore. It's like I took the board test like 10 years ago now, I think. Yeah, it would have been 10 years ago now since I took the NCCOM, and I didn't study very hard for them, so I don't remember what's on the test. I don't remember what the test was like. I don't really have... I feel like I guess what I'm saying is I feel like there are other people who are really up on the trends of what the testing is like, and they might know what things to focus on and what things not to focus on. So I would definitely check out the HB Kim seminars. I think if you go to HB Kim's website, he sometimes has free live streams, and then he also has courses that you can buy. I think Bina has some. She might be TCM Review. So I think she has some courses and sometimes does some stuff. What I did is, if you were going to take one book, get that HB Kim book, Handbook of Oriental Medicine. He has a lot of charts and stuff like that. So, sorry, I have to press the right buttons. So this one, Handbook of Oriental Medicine. Basically, there's two of them. There's like a big one that's a textbook, and there's a smaller one that's more like a pocket clinic aid. Get the big one. And basically, it's divided up into sections. So I'd say, before you take the exam, just read that section. So there's a fundamentals section. So before you take the fundamentals, read the entire section on fundamentals. Before you take the acupuncture portion, read the entire section on acupuncture. And so, at least when I took the test, some of the stuff was like very directly, it's kind of like there would be a question, and I'd be like, oh, I remember, this was a chart in HB Kim, where like some of it was weird stuff. It talked about like the order of treatment, that it's first, it's like you do an intake, then you diagnose, then treatment plan, blah, blah, blah. There was stuff about there are lines. You diagnose by the lines on children's hands, and there was like one specific picture in HB Kim that I talked about that. So I feel like that it seems like the test was just like taken from this book. So I'd look on that one. What's his website? Acupuncturemedia.com. So if you go there, he has, you can buy the book, and if you don't like Amazon, you can buy the book directly from him. It's probably better to buy the book directly from him. If you buy it from Amazon, it probably takes a bigger cut. Amazon takes a bigger cut. So he has those books. He has the handbook and then the mini book. I would say the mini book is fine if you're in clinic. If you're studying for the exam, get the handbook or get them both. And yeah, you can even look at some sample pages here where he has everything put into tables. Looks, he's got the WordPress. So he's got everything divided into tables. So that makes it really easy. And then I think he occasionally has free webinars. And so this is something that you can also check out his live streams. And so he's someone that I think he is very up on what's going on with the testing. So I would go to something like that. I don't know what's on tests anymore. So most of the stuff I make is based on the classes I was teaching. I taught a lot of first year classes. So most of the stuff I make is beginner level stuff for like, it's basically this. It's like, this is what I think you should know as a first year student in order to survive the rest of school. When it comes to passing a test, I don't know. I don't know what that's like. Alex is saying, what's your take on Master Tongue School? I don't know a whole lot about Master Tongue magic points. I'll be honest, I remember when I graduated, I had some friends who were like, oh yeah, I'm going to go do a Master Tongue seminar. And I was kind of like, we just went through 4 years of school. We learned, there are 361 points on the 14 channels, and we learned, then there are the extra points. It's like, we already learned 400 points. Do you really need to go learn more points? Maybe you should like focus on the points that you've already learned and make sure you understand those before you start going and learning more points. So as a system, I would say like I try to have this, like, I think all the systems are valid. It's fine if you want to do balance method, if you want to do 5-element, if you want to do Japanese style, if you want to do Korean style, Som acupuncture, if you want to do all these things, I think they all have their place. They're all valid. And if you like them and they speak to you, do them. Sometimes I get really judgmental where I think people are like, I think students are hipsters. They're like, oh, TCM is too mainstream. I'm going to go do this other thing instead. And that's not a very nice thing to say. But sometimes I get judgmental about that. But so I don't know. If you like it, try it. Some people say they get really good results. Some people are really into it and they get really good results, and that's probably true. But then there are people who do 5-element. There are people who do Japanese style. There are people who do TCM. There are people who do channel theory, more Zong Fu. People do classical Chinese, and they all get really good results. So I think it's up to you. It's like this saying in martial arts, people are like, is Taekwondo better than karate? And people will say, there's no such thing as a superior martial art. There's only superior martial artists. And so it's really up to the practitioner, not the school. What do you think of patients attending chiropractor for the same problem you are treating? Do you think they can complement each other? Yeah. I think it depends on what it is. But I don't think they're going to interfere. It's kind of interesting, especially when we're dealing with musculoskeletal things. I feel like if you're doing massage and like sports acupuncture, you're mainly addressing soft tissue and muscles, whereas chiropractors are mainly addressing the skeleton and structural things. And so at that point, I think they go really well together, because like on the one hand, if your muscles are too tight, they will pull things out of alignment. And so it's kind of like you can have the chiropractor put things back into alignment, and then you can have massage or acupuncture relax the muscles. And so sometimes you get people that they really like the chiropractic adjustments, but they don't stick. So it's like if you have really tight muscles, you can, knock your vertebrae back into place, but if the muscles are still tight, they'll just pull them back out of place the next day. So you kind of do them both, that you need to relax the muscles and you need to get the alignment right. I've had some times where it happens the other way around, where it's really that the bones are out of place and that causes tightness and pain in the muscles. So sometimes I've had this happen where I address the muscles through acupuncture and massage, and the pain goes away, and now the bones are able to settle into the correct place once I relax the muscles through acupuncture and massage. But I've had it happen the other way, where people have this like pain underneath their shoulder blade that it just won't go away. I've been needling and massage and doing all these things for weeks, and it just won't go away. They went to a chiropractor, and in one chiropractic adjustment, the pain went away. And so that's kind of like the root cause was some misalignment that I wasn't able to get through soft tissue, but the chiropractor was able to fix it in one thing. So I think they can go together, depending on, sometimes it's like a chicken and the egg, but depending on which caused it first. So I think it's totally fine. What's the reason for tooth gum swelling and stomach heat or any other reason? Yeah, usually we would associate that with, we could say stomach heat or heat in the yang ming. Remember the large intestine channel? Technically, according to the books, the large intestine channel enters the upper gums, the stomach channel enters the lower gums. No, I have that backwards. The large intestine channel enters the lower gums because it starts at the hand and goes up to the face, so it enters the lower gums. The stomach channel starts technically at Li20, but it starts at the face and comes down, so it enters the upper gums. So we could just say heat in the yang ming. I think technically you would use them both. You would use like Li4, stomach 44. You wouldn't differentiate between upper and lower. Most people just use both. I think Sun Tzu Miao was using like Li3 or Li10 or something, regardless of whether it was upper or lower. But yeah, usually heat in the yang ming, and then sometimes we need to see, does that heat come from something else? So like if we were looking at formulas, we have a couple formulas for stomach heat. One is Qingwei San. And I think that's specifically, like here we're specifically talking about toothache and bleeding gums. Qingwei San is for stomach heat, stomach fire. Then we have one like Yinyu Jian, where there's not only toothache and bleeding gums, but the teeth are loose. And so that tells us there's some underlying kidney yin deficiency. So Yinyu Jian is for stomach, exuberant stomach heat with underlying kidney yin deficiency. But yeah, I think generally teeth, if there's like bleeding or pain, we might go to yang ming heat. If there's like brittleness or weakness, we might go to the kidney because the kidney governs the bone and teeth are bones, or there might be some combination of each. So that's where I would go. Yeah, but especially if it's swelling, if there's bleeding of the gums, you can. Sometimes I had one of my Chinese teachers would ask, it's like when you brush or when you floss, your gums bleed easily, and so that would be a sign of stomach heat. Going back to our last one, it's liver blood stagnation. That's why I'm using spleen. That's interesting. Still, when you're talking about, I mean, spleen, yeah, spleen 6 kind of makes sense because it's that 3 in intersection. Spleen 3 just sounded a little bit strange to me just because it's the yuan source point. I would think about tonifying spleen qi. Depending on what the specific conditions are, like spleen 10, shui hai is a point that comes to mind because that moves blood and clears heat. But I think we usually use that specifically when there's either skin conditions due to blood heat or dermatological conditions. But again, if we're talking about liver and lung, I might focus a little bit more on those channels. But there are different ways to do things. So. But originally we were talking about, is that a possible pattern? You're like, yeah, that's something that classically comes up. Am I looking at? That's something that classically comes up a lot, is because we have liver rebelling against the lung, so liver excess or liver stagnation causing lung stuff. That's a really common thing. All right, we've been going for a while. I was going to have this be a short one because I was ill prepared, but I went off on a long tangent about liver qi stagnation. So I want to go watch some Star Wars. I haven't seen the new episode of The Bad Batch. I hope they made a new one. I hope they didn't skip a week. So I'm going to go take a nap, watch some Star Wars, maybe go to the gym and work. I need to work on, speaking of Chingwei-san, I'm still working on that formula review course, and I'm only on the clear heat section. So I was going to bring that up. That's going to take too long to bring that up. But so that's kind of what we're doing right now is still working on that formula review course. It's going very slow. I took a week off and went and chopped down trees to help prevent forest fires. So I took a week off, and now I really need to get back to it. So probably what I'll do is I have everything recorded for the clear heat section. It's going to be really long. It turns out that's a really big section, so it's going to be like a 50-minute video. So it's going to take a while to make all those things. So I think I'm going to do that, and then after that, what I'm going to do is a couple months ago, I did some live streams where I just did live review of all the formulas that are on the NCCOM list. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those recordings and then just chop them up and make that into the rest of the course. Otherwise, it's going to take me a year to make this formula review course. So I think what I'm going to do is just chop up those live streams and make those the sections for the formula review course. Then we'll have some handouts and some practice tests to go along with it. But that way we can get the people have been asking me, like, where's this review course? That way we can at least get it out, and then I'll go through and actually make nicer versions that replace those live stream recordings. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing. So I'm just going to finish up that section and then try to get this formula review course out so that people can take that. And it might be it might not look as nice initially because it'll be, instead of being nice recordings with nice editings, it'll just be the live streams with the slides I have along the side. So it'll just look like this instead of looking like some of the nicer videos. But at least there'll be something out, and then I'll as that comes out, I'll start recording the nicer ones. So that's something I'll probably be working on for the next couple weeks, and hopefully that'll get out, and then we can get back into regular videos. I feel like everybody's been asking me about point location videos, so I can get to some of that. But thank you everyone for being here. If you want to support the channel, there are a couple ways you can do that. I have some links in the description below. There are a couple ways you can do that. One is to join the Patreon, and so I always like to say thank you to the Patreon members. That really helps with supporting the website and makes it possible to do some of this kind of stuff. And so that's one way you can support the website, is joining the Patreon. Patreon is like a subscription thing. It's a monthly contribution. So it'd be like you'd be pledging $3 every month or $5 every month. And it's kind of like the PBS, when PBS is like, this program is brought to you thanks to the support of viewers like you. Those are the Patreon members who make a monthly pledge. And so that's one way you can do it. If you don't want to make a monthly pledge, you just want to do a one-time thing, I set up a buy me a coffee, and that instead of doing something monthly, you can just do something one time. So normally with this stuff on YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that, YouTube has like super chats and Twitch has bits or something like that. And my YouTube channel is just not set up for super chats, but if you like this live stream and you want to donate something, that's one option, is the buy me a coffee link below. Another way to support the channel is these review courses that are coming out. Right now we have the single herb review course for $40. We're going to be coming out with a formula course in a couple weeks, hopefully. Other things you can do is if you go to the website, you go to the website, look at book recommendations. These are all Amazon affiliate links, so if you buy anything through this page, it will Amazon will give me a commission. It's like 4.5%. It's not much, but if you click on this link, and even if you click on Wang Juyi, even if you don't buy the Wang Juyi, if you go buy something else, it'll still, within the next 24 hours, it will give me a commission. So that's one option if you're buying something on Amazon anyway. Another option is go look at this free Audible trial. That's another thing that if you sign up for a free Audible trial, it'll give me $5. So if you want to do that, that's a way to shoot me $5 real quick. And so you can get things like The Spark in the Machine by Daniel Kuhn. And so this is kind of a way of trying to explain acupuncture and the channels and meridians using science. So this is kind of like the is electricity flowing through the human body the same thing as chi? And so this is kind of an interesting audiobook that you can listen to if you're bored. But those are other ways you can support the channel. But I know that I was a student. I was really poor for a long time, so I know that not everybody is able to give monetary support. So I think it's great that you're here, watching the videos, liking the stuff, and sharing it with your friends and your study groups. That really helps us out. Really appreciate that. I was gonna say comments help the algorithm. I don't think the algorithm matters very much for me. But thank you for being here. If you have any other questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. We'll get to them next time, and we'll see you next week. Because we're getting kind of long here, I'm going to take off. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here. Oh wow, I put my camera in a weird position. There's like that light right in front of it, so... Oh, I should also say, will this button work? No, that button won't work. I should also say, make sure you check out the podcast, podcast.tcmstudy.net. I started doing that kind of stuff again. So if you go to podcast.tcmstudy.net, there's some cool stuff about community acupuncture. And then we just did one with Mark Brinson from Evil Bone Water. So if you're into Jung Shui, that might be an interesting one to look at. So check out the podcast too. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for being here.